one of the amazing things about
is
that we get to, that's okay, that we get to sort of hear, you know, from people who are doing the most cutting edge research at every part of the disease. Really amazing. And the other thing is that it's incredible to see how, you know, how some of these topics kind of interweave with one another. I talked earlier about some of the regulatory pieces and thinking about biomarkers and surrogate outcomes. What we're going to do now is talk just a little bit, just give a preview of a session that will happen next week looking at neurotechnology. And we've divided that really into two parts. One part is to think about how technology is incorporating into digital biomarkers, and the other part, how technology is helping people communicate when they're unable to speak in the form of brain-computer interface. And so Lee Hochberg is leading that session, and you know, boy, seeing it come together, I have to tell you, it's going to be an incredible lineup of speakers. I'm going to share my screen and just give a few slides to kind of talk about the topic of what we'll see. So give me just a second here. But just a prelude, but I'll run through a few slides quickly. For people who are here this morning, you saw this slide. These are our traditional outcome measures, and this whole session, I think, will be about getting around our typical outcome measures, and then with sort of better outcome measures, and then also improving quality of life for people who are affected by ALS. We think the ALS-FRS is not a perfect outcome. It works remarkably well, but it's not what we call psychometrically sound. It hasn't been designed from the ground up as a patient-reported outcome measure. It's actually surprising it works as well as it does, though it does work relatively well. We have many additional scales, some that are being developed specifically to address the shortcomings. But I think the key point for the conference next week is that we live in a data-rich world, and that we should take advantage of that data. And that in order to take advantage of that data, we need new tools and new approaches. Because digital biomarkers might quantify function, gather big data that we can really use different analytic methods to sort through. Be simple for people who are participating in trials, and as a result, facilitate trials. Also give us new ways to communicate with participants in trials and inform care. I mean, I think beyond just clinical trials, these digital biomarkers may have a role in care. Just to give you a sense of how much processing is a part of this, this is actually not even raw data, but you know, sort of no smoothing applied to distance traveled. And when we apply the smoothing, that's sort of what we come out with. So you have to really be developing your data methods along with the tools that we're developing for digital outcome measures, and that should not be sort of undersold as an important part of this. Researchers, people with ALS, regulators would really like to move to digital outcome measures for all the reasons I've talked about. Our goal being faster trials, less burden, more reflective of real life impact, and capturing even subtle effects more effectively. But we have to go through some steps. We have to gather data to show utility of the biomarkers. We have to feel comfortable about usability. And what I would say is that this is actually coming a very long way. And we can see that in compliance numbers in different studies. We have to understand change over time, and then talk about the regulatory considerations that I touched on this morning. You know, smartphones present this huge opportunity because we can gather a lot of data. Most of us have a cell phone with us at all times, and we actually are almost all afraid of not having a cell phone with us. That's not uniformly true, and we need to deal with the fact that it's not uniformly true. But these cell phones are loaded with ways to collect data, both through passive data, that is sensors, and also the ability to collect information from people by asking questions or having them do tasks. We've shown that we can quantify changes in behavior. This was a study that was going on in people who had ALS at the time of the COVID pandemic, when the COVID pandemic started, and we saw how much time people spent at home was already almost 20 hours a day, but went to really almost 24 hours a day. That compares to the general population that went from spending 10 hours at home, 14 hours at home, again, based on cell phone data. So a pretty powerful technique. We also are using cell phones to collect information about how quickly people speak by making recordings and then calculating their speaking rate. Typical speaking rate is above 150 words per minute. So we see that some people with ALS speak more slowly. And the question is, does that impact their life in any way? And we're beginning to answer that question by looking at a scale called the Communicative Participation Index. And this tells us about whether people's communication, whether their interactions are affected. And we can see that, yes, when speaking rate is below 150 words per minute, people do report that their communication is impacted. That imbues this outcome measure with meaning and is important when we go to people like the FDA or the EMA to say, we think that words per minute is an outcome that matters. We're also sort of at the starting point for looking at cough, audiograms of cough. That is, we make an audio recording of cough and trying to understand what that tells us. And we think that what it tells us is that actually it does have a pretty good accuracy for predicting bulbar symptoms, but not respiratory symptoms. So we need to validate this work, and we're collecting those recordings as we go. We can deliver outcome measures like the Rasch-Built Overall ALS Disability Scale, which was developed by Christina Fournier, and is a patient-reported outcome measure that can easily be given on a smartphone or a tablet. And we can even give the ALS-FRS-R as a self-entry tool. It correlates very highly with ALS-FRS given in the clinic, but it is slightly higher when we have people give it to themselves. The decline is about the same, but because we can get the rate of decline, I should say, but because we can get more measurements, we can get more power out of these self-entry ALS-FRS-Rs if we can make it easy for people to comply with it. But we can get even more information when we do it digitally, because here you can see a plot of how long it takes people to complete the ALS-FRS-R. And what we can see is that as the score goes down, the time to complete that survey goes up. And so we can really gather even more information out of the same outcome measure. Wearables is also an interesting potential for our trials. And this is something that I have to say I shied away from for a long time, because I thought I wasn't completely sure that people would be able to comply and wear these in the way that we'd like. But actually, after doing a number of studies, we've seen a lot of dedication in people who are in the studies, which is remarkable. And we've gotten data to say that actually, and I showed this earlier, that sort of the non-sedentary minutes, for example, change over 6 months and correlate with outcome measures like ALS-FRS-R. So these are the kinds of topics that we're going to talk about when we get together next week to have the conference. We have people from industry, people from tech companies, and we have people who are thinking about big data, so that we can think about how we draw together all those pieces and make this into something that really revolutionizes how we do trials. I wonder if there are any quick questions, and then we can move on. And I think Indu wants to say a few words, and me perhaps as well. Indu, would you like to say a few words about this session next week?
Yes. So I think we're going to discuss a lot more on October 11th. And the way it came about was, we were just casually talking about how come technology is such a big part of what we do and accelerating the development of, ALS, and we somehow don't have it included in the traditional way in the conference. So when we just casually discuss, and this came about, really including it and making a whole new day, because this is such an important, and I hope all of you will come to the event, and we'll talk more about it in Everything ALS, but I'm the founder of Everything ALS, and I know not a lot of new old faces here. And, I came up with Everything ALS because I had a personal story. And I'm a technologist. I'm an electrical engineer with computer science masters. I've worked at NASA. I've been on the founding team of WebMD, and also started my own company, which I successfully exited in outsourced manufacturing, which we all enjoy, having all the supply chain, smartphones and computers. And my husband was at Amazon for about 18 years. He built Amazon Cloud. So all of you are really touching a lot of his innovation in your daily life, if you've ever used iPhone or any cloud today, and also Mechanical Turk. And what was really surprising for us is when he had a symptom, and what we went through as a patient and a caregiver was really, in a lot of ways, I would say, eye-opening for us. Eye-opening that we were actually working on so many different verticals, trying to change them, bring technology, make them, last 20 years. And we kind of left out on healthcare because we did not understand it. It's not really transparent to a lot of us when we are healthy. And thanks for everything you guys do. And once Merit was one of Peter's physicians, and we've been talking to her as we were going through. And as Merit does, after he passed away, she said, Indu, you're going to continue working on it, right? So we started brainstorming about what are the frictions, and I met James very early, and we've been brainstorming about taking some of the findings that what James found and really trying to take it to commercial market. So what does it take? Put it in front of FDA, take it all the way, and look at the startups in this ecosystem, and what do we need to do to nurture those innovation and those startups? And that's what everything ALS is. Everything ALS is born with a very, very clear single vision to really work on what we call digital biomarker, that is really bringing these technology innovations to clinical endpoints as our first mission, and second is for early diagnosis. So we have done a lot of work in bringing a lot of ecosystem players into this, and we'll talk about it more on the 11th. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I think I'll pass it over to Lee.
Hey, it's Shell. I'm gonna be.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Shalina Lalji. It's an honor to be here today, and I'd like to first thank ALS ONE for their collaboration in bringing neurotechnology to the forefront in ALS through this conference. Like Indu mentioned, this was born out of a casual retreat, if you will, with a few of us thinking about neurotechnology and how to really bring it to the forefront. I'm going to share my screen for a few minutes here. My introduction into the world of ALS was when my sweet husband, Ayaz, was diagnosed in 2017 at the early age of 51. Much like Indu, I have a personal connection to ALS. Ayaz was at the prime of his life. At that time, he was a practicing dentist and entrepreneur, father of our two beautiful children who were only 13 and 16 years old at the time. And unfortunately, Ayaz had a very aggressive form of ALS and progressed very rapidly. Fortunately, though, with a lot of hard work, dedication, a lot of help from a lot of you on the call, Merit's been on our caregiving on our medical team for a very long time. Lee has been down and evaluated Ayaz for different things. We've had Dr. Brown, Dr. Harms, I mean, the list just goes on, Dr. James Berry. We have been very fortunate, and through all of that, and most of all, Ayaz's warrior spirit, Ayaz is still with us today, fighting this battle very valiantly. We've worked very hard as a family to create memories, and that's what we really want to bring to all ALS patients out there, is the ability to build memories and to have a better quality of life. And until we do find a cure, the quality of life can be given back to them through different modes of technology. As you can see, that was Merit's birthday that we celebrated with her last year. And to us, it's just a team effort. It's all of us working together. So as a family, we felt strongly that we wanted to be part of the solution. We didn't want to be on the sidelines and just wait for a cure to happen. So we founded ALS Heroes to honor all the heroes like each of you, as well as all the people that are living with ALS. And for us, it was all about supporting quality of life measures and really focusing on research, advocacy, quality of life, and now our biggest focus is technology. We've also been fortunate to work with Merit and the Healy Center team to come up with awards, because we really want to focus on repair and regeneration for patients who have lost a lot of function. And a lot of what I heard today was we're moving in the right direction to be able to come up with different modalities to regain the function that a lot of ALS patients have lost. I can tell you from personal experience that communication, mobility, independence is vital for each human being who is dealing with ALS or anything else to even want to keep living and keep going on. As for us, we lost limb function very early and mobility very early. And in the last 18 months, we've also lost most communication. The eye gaze no longer works for Ayaz reliably because of the impact on his eyes. And this personal
Lee, maybe Lee, you might want to jump in as.
I can. I'm tempted to wait for Shell for another.
Yeah, let's give her just a moment. See if we can get Shell back here.
Okay, there.
Everything okay?
Yeah, we lost you for a second there.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Okay. So while the search continues for cures that reverse the course of ALS, there's another field of research that's seeking to restore communication and mobility, and that's the field of brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs. The idea for a BCI robot arm, or maybe back toward the control of the person's own arm and their hand. It sounds kind of like science fiction, but it's already happening. And that's the great thing. Several companies have actually started to build BCIs, and the CEOs of 3 of those companies will be with us next Tuesday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. They'll be telling us about their companies, but not just that, about their hopes to help people with different kinds of paralyses, including people with ALS. But this session will be more than just a show and tell. What's going to be great is we want this to be an interactive opportunity for everyone to learn more about one another, as well as one of the most exciting fields, not only in ALS research, but in all of medicine. To help us explore the opportunities and the challenges ahead, we've gathered some of the top minds in the field. So I'm now excited to introduce our moderator for the afternoon, who is also one of the world's leading experts on BCIs, Dr. Lee Hochberg. Lee, of course, does not need much of an introduction because most of you know Lee, but Lee is a Mass General and Harvard neurologist. He's the director of the Mass General Center for Neurotechnology and Neurorecovery, the L. Herbert Ballou University Professor of Engineering and Professor of Brain Science at Brown University, and the list just keeps going on. But without further ado, he is most importantly the director of the BrainGate clinical trials, which have been responsible for some of the most amazing breakthroughs in BCI research over the past 18 years. And while he'll tell you a little bit more about the BrainGate research next Tuesday, for now, I'll turn the Zoom camera over to Lee to describe the rest of this session that's going to happen next Tuesday. Lee, it's all yours.
Thanks very much, Shell, and it's good to see everybody. And thanks so much for the invitation to moderate what I think is going to be a really fun and informative session next Tuesday. As Shell was just describing, there's a lot of excitement about the development of brain-computer interfaces, which is a field that's now had nearly half a century of fundamental publicly funded research, which in the past 20 years has just begun, which I know 20 years doesn't sound like just, but has 20 years of human subjects research that is working with people with ALS and other forms of paralysis. And one of the inspirations for this session is it's just in the past few years that industry has taken a serious dive into the creation of brain-computer interfaces, and hopefully they are on their way to developing products that will restore communication and restore mobility for people with ALS. So together with many of the people who are on the call here today, and thanks to Merit and Indu and James and Bob and Jen and many others, the group that's getting together is not only these 3 CEOs who will present what their companies all are hoping for and hoping to achieve over just the next few years in the various stages of either clinical trials or preclinical research that they're in. But then right after them, we've lined up 6 incredible academics who in their own right are all leading different aspects of brain-computer interface research or BCI research from around the world. There's folks from Utrecht and University of Pittsburgh and Hopkins and MGH and the V Center in Geneva and UCSF. And I think that was 6 if I missed one and one more. But those 6 will then pepper our 3 CEOs with questions. Our CEOs will get a chance to respond to those very informed questions. And then most importantly, it'll be a really interactive opportunity for questions and answers from everybody who tunes in. I think this will be a chance for all of us to really understand where brain-computer interfaces are, where they're going, what their potential is, which is really amazing, and perhaps equally as importantly, what their challenges are, in getting to market, what their challenges are in subsequent reimbursement, because as we all know, all of our continuing academic research may well have set the stage for industry's current investment, but unless they can get across the finish line with approval and reimbursement, then there won't yet be a product that's available for people with ALS. So I'm really excited for this panel. I look forward to moderating it. I'm almost willing to guarantee that it will be fun. I can guarantee that it'll be informative, and most importantly, I think it'll be a chance for all of us to learn about what is really, I think, going to happen just the very next few years in terms of being able to restore communication mobility for people with ALS. And I will point out, I saw a question earlier in the chat that was referring to the ability to control one's iPhone as that gets lost with decreases in eye gaze. Or first, of course, in motor function of the hand, and then moving to a eye gaze-based system. I have every confidence that particularly implanted brain-computer interfaces are going to be able to enable complete control over one's tablet computer or smartphone or iPhone or any other computer just by thinking about the movement of one's hand. And it's with that, as Shell appropriately referred to it, science fiction-like prediction. I think that the field has made great progress, and I look forward to next Tuesday when some really great people will be presenting their research and collectively talking about it.
James, you're on mute.
Of course I'm on. Of course I am. Thanks so much, Lee. I have to tell you, I mean, having sort of borne witness to almost the last 15 years at least of your work and how it's developed and how the field has kind of grown up with you and how you brought along so many partners. It's really amazing. And I'm actually incredibly excited to see these, all of these different technologies talked about sort of side by side and see what the kind of best practices are and what the successes are across the different approaches. It really is science fiction-like, but here it is. And so really looking forward to that second half of the day. So digital biomarkers in the first half and brain-computer interface in the second half. I think that's probably everything we can do as a preview today. And that session will be on October 11th.